Earthquakes, nature's most unpredictable and terrifying weapon. In just a few seconds, the ground beneath our feet can split open, buildings can crumble, and entire cities can fall silent. They remind us that no matter how powerful humanity becomes, the Earth can still shake it all away in moments. So today, we'll revisit the 10 biggest earthquakes ever recorded in human history. Earthquakes that didn't just destroy cities, but changed the course of nations. It was an ordinary winter morning in Japan on January 17, 1995, when the city of Kobe was jolted awake by a violent tremor. A 6.9 magnitude earthquake struck the Hyogo prefecture, and in just 20 seconds, one of Japan's most developed cities was reduced to dust. Highways twisted like ribbons, entire buildings collapsed in the blink of an eye. More than 6,000 people lost their lives, and over 300,000 were left homeless. Japan, known for its engineering brilliance, had never seen such chaos in a modern city. Trains were derailed, fires burned for days, and communication lines were destroyed. But what truly defined this tragedy wasn't just the destruction, it was how people responded. Ordinary citizens became heroes. Neighbors who had never spoken before now dug through debris together. Even the Yakuza, Japan's feared mafia, opened their warehouses and provided food and water to victims before the government could arrive. For a nation built on discipline and resilience, this tragedy became a turning point, pushing Japan to build one of the world's most advanced earthquake warning systems in the years that followed. If the Kobe earthquake showed how powerful modern cities could fall, China's Tangshan earthquake showed how unimaginable human loss could be. On July 28, 1976, at 3:42 a.m., while most of the city slept, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck Tangshan, an industrial city home to 1 million people. Within minutes, nearly 85% of the buildings were reduced to rubble. The official death toll reported by the Chinese government was around 242,000, but many experts believe the real number may have been closer to 700,000, making it one of the deadliest earthquakes ever recorded. It wasn't just buildings that fell, it was an entire way of life. Families were wiped out in seconds. Hospitals collapsed, roads disappeared, even rescue teams had no idea where to begin. And as the survivors gathered outside, a powerful aftershock hit, flattening whatever little remained. The scale of the disaster was so massive that the government kept it secret from the world for days. Tangshan eventually rose again, rebuilt from scratch. But for many, the memory of that night still defines their lives. It remains one of the darkest chapters in China's modern history. Almost 4 decades later, the world watched live as another Himalayan nation faced the wrath of the earth. On April 25, 2015, at 11:56 a.m., a 7.8 magnitude earthquake hit Nepal. The ground shook violently, ancient temples in Kathmandu crumbled, and entire villages near the epicenter vanished. Over 9,000 people were killed and more than 20,000 injured. But what made this disaster even more heartbreaking was what happened on Mount Everest. The earthquake triggered a massive avalanche, sweeping through base camps where hundreds of climbers were preparing their ascent. Tents, supplies, and lives were buried under snow and rock in seconds. For the first time in history, the world's tallest mountain went silent. Not with awe, but with mourning. Nepal, known for its breathtaking landscapes and warm-hearted people, suddenly became a symbol of fragility and courage. Countries around the world rushed in to help, and what followed was one of the largest international rescue efforts ever seen. But even amid the tragedy, there was hope. Videos emerged of locals pulling strangers from debris, monks chanting for peace in ruined temples, and children smiling amid collapsed homes. It was proof that even when the earth breaks apart, humanity finds a way to stand again. And as devastating as these quakes were, they were only the beginning, because what came next would shake not just cities, but entire nations, changing maps, rewriting histories, and testing the limits of human endurance. It was a regular afternoon in Sichuan province, western China. Children were in schools, factories were running, and the sun was shining until the ground began to roar. At 2:28 p.m., a 7.9 magnitude earthquake struck. Within moments, the tremor rippled across mountains, collapsing over 80,000 buildings, including thousands of schools filled with children. Entire villages were wiped out in seconds. Parents ran barefoot through debris searching for their children. Some never found them. What made this tragedy unforgettable wasn't just the death toll, estimated at nearly 90,000 people, but the pain that followed. Stories emerged of poorly built school buildings that couldn't withstand the earthquake, sparking nationwide outrage. Amid the heartbreak, the world witnessed extraordinary courage. Rescue teams worked non-stop for days. Volunteers arrived from every corner of China. One photograph, a firefighter carrying a small child covered in dust, became a symbol of national grief and unity. But one detail stood out. A writer named Tan Zorin, who investigated the building collapses, was later arrested for spreading rumors. Even tragedy couldn't silence the political tension. Yet the spirit of the people remained unbroken. And the Sichuan earthquake became a painful reminder that corruption in construction can kill more than an earthquake ever could. Fast forward to February 27, 2010, when South America faced one of the strongest quakes in modern history. At 3:34 a.m., a massive 8.8 magnitude earthquake struck Chile, shaking the entire coastline. The tremor lasted for nearly 3 minutes, long enough for panic to spread from city to city. Buildings swayed like pendulums, bridges cracked open, and highways buckled like paper. But the real horror came from the ocean. The earthquake unleashed a tsunami that crashed into coastal towns minutes later, destroying everything in its path. The death toll reached over 500 people, but what shocked experts wasn't the number. It was how well Chile handled it. Because of decades of strict building codes and preparedness, millions survived what could have been a national catastrophe. However, even for the survivors, life was far from normal. Electricity vanished, water supplies were cut off, and entire regions were left isolated. And yet, amid all this, people found ways to help each other. Farmers shared food, neighbors built shelters together, and musicians sang to calm frightened children. Chile's resilience became a global example, proof that preparation can save lives even when nature shows its full strength. Now we go back in time to one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded, and one that very few people even know about. On November 4, 1952, deep in Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula, the Earth erupted with unimaginable force. The magnitude, 9.0, one of the biggest in human history. Fortunately, this region was sparsely populated, meaning relatively few lives were lost. But the earthquake triggered a massive tsunami, with waves reaching as high as 50 feet, traveling across the Pacific Ocean. Hours later, the same waves struck the coasts of Hawaii, Alaska, and even Chile, thousands of kilometers away. Entire fishing villages were destroyed, and the event marked the beginning of modern tsunami monitoring systems across the world. At that time, global communication was limited, so people in Hawaii had no idea a wall of water was approaching until it was too late. Imagine standing on the beach, watching the ocean suddenly pull back, revealing the seabed. And before you could even understand what was happening, a mountain of water came roaring toward you. This event taught scientists that an earthquake in one corner of the planet could cause destruction halfway around the globe. It was nature's brutal way of reminding us that the Earth's oceans and crust are connected in ways we're still learning to understand. By now, the story of earthquakes had already shown us unimaginable loss and courage, but the most powerful quakes were yet to come. The next few would not only change landscapes, but rewrite maps, cause nuclear disasters, and leave scars that the world still carries today. March 11th, 2011, a day Japan will never forget. At 2:46 p.m., an enormous 9.0 magnitude earthquake struck off the country's northeastern coast. For 6 terrifying minutes, the ground shook with unimaginable force. But what came next turned disaster into horror. A massive tsunami, rising more than 130 feet, slammed into the coastline, swallowing towns, airports, and farmlands in seconds. Cars, ships, and entire buildings were swept away as if they were toys. Over 18,000 people lost their lives, and millions were left without homes. But the tragedy didn't end there. The tsunami flooded the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, disabling its cooling systems. Within hours, nuclear reactors began to melt down, releasing radioactive material into the air and sea. It became one of the worst nuclear disasters since Chernobyl. Yet, in the middle of destruction, Japan showed what resilience truly means. Videos surfaced of survivors calmly standing in queues for food and water. No chaos, no looting, only quiet strength. And when power was finally restored days later, rescue workers continued searching for survivors long after hope had faded. Japan's 2011 earthquake was more than a natural disaster. It was a lesson in how unity and discipline can shine even in the darkest hours. The day after Christmas, December 26, 2004, millions across Asia woke up to a calm morning, unaware that one of the deadliest disasters in modern history was minutes away. At 7:58 a.m., a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Sumatra, Indonesia. The seabed shifted violently, displacing billions of tons of water. Within minutes, a series of tsunamis began racing across the Indian Ocean. The waves struck Indonesia, Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, and even Africa, traveling at speeds over 800 kilometers per hour. In some places, the ocean mysteriously pulled back, exposing the seabed and leaving fish flopping on the sand. Curious locals walked out to see it, unaware of what was coming. Moments later, walls of water as high as 100 feet roared ashore. Entire coastlines vanished. The tsunami killed more than 230,000 people across 14 countries, one of the deadliest events ever recorded. Footage from that day still haunts the internet. People running as water chases them through streets, families clinging to rooftops, and children being pulled away by the waves. But amid the horror, countless stories of humanity emerged. Fishermen risked their lives to save strangers. Tourists formed human chains to pull people to safety. The tragedy united the world in grief, and in response, the Indian Ocean Tsunami Warning System was created to ensure such a disaster would never again strike without warning. Before the world had satellites or advanced warning systems, another powerful earthquake shook the planet. On March 27, 1964, at 5:36 p.m., the U.S. state of Alaska was struck by a 9.2 magnitude quake, the second largest earthquake ever recorded in human history. The shaking lasted for 4.5 minutes, splitting highways, toppling bridges, and tearing open the Earth's surface. In Anchorage, the ground sank several feet, swallowing cars and homes. Tsunami waves as high as 30 feet spread across the Pacific, hitting the west coast of the U.S. and even parts of Japan. The earthquake killed 131 people, but it also changed science forever. It gave geologists crucial data that led to the modern theory of plate tectonics, explaining how Earth's crust moves and why earthquakes happen. So, while the Alaska quake destroyed towns, it also expanded human understanding of the very planet we live on. And finally, the most powerful earthquake ever recorded. May 22, 1960, southern Chile. At 3:11 p.m., the Earth unleashed energy equivalent to nearly 2,000 atomic bombs. The 9.5 magnitude quake ripped through the country, flattening everything in its path. Houses collapsed, rivers changed course, and parts of the coastline sank beneath the ocean. A tsunami followed, traveling across the Pacific and striking Hawaii, Japan, and the Philippines. In total, over 1,600 people died, and nearly 2 million were left homeless. The shaking was so intense that it caused volcanic eruptions in the Andes Mountains days later, as if the Earth itself couldn't stop releasing its rage. The 1960 Chile earthquake remains a terrifying reminder of how small we are compared to the forces beneath us. These 10 earthquakes reshaped not just land, but human history. They remind us that despite all our progress, our cities, our machines, our technology, we still live on a planet that's alive, breathing, and sometimes shaking with fury. But every time the earth has fallen silent again, humanity has risen stronger. And maybe that's the real story, not just about destruction, but about resilience. Thanks for watching, and remember, the ground beneath us holds stories deeper than we'll ever know. Do like, share, and subscribe.